thing we thought about it, you know, college and career readiness, when you could have conversations about students about what they want to do with their life or what's important to them now. And the districts were so excited, and they said we could just see the use with all levels of kids. I mean, they were even going all the way down to 5th grade, up to their graduating students. And they thought, just like we're saying now, they thought a lot broader than college and career. They also thought about, this is just great for anything. They talked about writing assignments and meeting the ELA standards and thinking about kids talking differently about math. And so actually the SST is going to be purchasing many of those and getting them to some of them. So thanks. Thanks, Dan, for sharing. So the teachers were really excited to see them. Felt they could be used in multiple ways.
So just another resource that can be used in your classrooms, at homes, with families, but pretty exciting that it came from our students and how in tune they were with the needs in our communities. I don't know, you may have seen Tom jump up there. We are recording this, just so you're aware. He just hit play or record, I guess, not play, record. So the meeting is being recorded. We're not planning on posting it. We're just testing out some things, but just being upfront and honest with you, the meeting is being recorded today. Just the screen, basically, up here. Terrell is going to come down, and like I said, she's going to talk about some information that's come out of the National Dropout Prevention Center. I can pass those out, Terrell, if you want.
Okay. Good morning. So I was fortunate enough to attend the National Dropout Conference that was in Columbus in October. And it was very, very exciting, and there was lots of great information, and there was lots of scary information about all the technology that's coming. It's going to be coming at us very fast and furious, probably a lot faster than we can even imagine. And Ray McNulty and Bill Daggett were the keynote speakers for the conference. I'm only have a couple other key speakers too, but these two guys, and you guys all know them, they were the opening and the closing session. And also at that, at the conference, so in addition to thinking about, you know, what instructional practice and all the things we do to try to keep kids in school and keep them engaged, one of the biggest things on the table, which we all know well, is trauma. And so they released this report. I've given you all a copy, and you can also, the link in the live binder takes you to it if you wanted to download more or get more copies. But they actually provided us with copies and said these were hot off the press. So they went around and put them on all the tables, and there was 800 people at the conference, and nobody took them. So I went up and I said, can I have as many as I want? And they said, well, yes, we don't want to take them back. So I went and grabbed some bags from the Oscar table and filled them all up and lugged around all these conferences. I said, we need these in our region. So the whole point of this improving school outcomes for trauma impacted students, and this was a big study that they did, so this is all evidence-based research, the point was moving from being trauma informed, right? So what we call our TIC, right? We want to be TIC schools, trauma informed care schools, to being trauma skilled schools. Because just knowing about it isn't enough. We have to know how to address it and what are we going to do about it. So there's a couple of things I wanted to highlight. I have to use the mic because you're recording, is that correct? No. Okay. Because I can't do all that. So I just wanted to highlight a couple of pages. So if you turn to page 1 on the introduction, I just really love this statement about kids that have experienced some type of trauma. And it says, for these students, doubling down on instruction is not likely to produce increased content mastery. Right? We have to address their needs before we can even think about guiding them to the academic piece of what we're trying to do. And then on page 3, that middle paragraph, it gives you the percentage of students that have experienced some type of trauma. And that's 2015 data, so it is pretty recent. I'm not going to read it to you, but I think it might be eye-opening, especially to some of your teachers, some of our teachers, because I think our teachers aren't aren't thinking actually what even is trauma. In their mind, do they really even know what the definition of trauma is? It doesn't have to be, a major car accident where somebody passed away, or, there's lots of things that come for trauma. And on page 5, it's where they really start going into the effects on learning. And it talks about that fight or flight. What we miss is sometimes as educators, as students that have experienced trauma, we could say something or request something or make a demand of a student that automatically takes them back to that trauma event. And then what I love, my good buddy Tom Valori says, he calls it amygdala hijack. And so which is what your brain automatically goes to that fight or flight. And then we have students that have these increased significant behaviors, and then what do? We punish the student for having the behavior instead of trying to find out why did that happen, what was the trigger. It might have anything to do with what happened at school, why that student acted out, but yet then we go and punish them, we send them to the office, we suspend them, do all kinds of things. We're doing more to them to increase their trauma. So I felt that was a pretty significant thing to think about. And then if you go to page 9, the second paragraph says that complex trauma is a type of disability. Oh, I know what this was. This is about litigation. So this starts to talk about schools, districts. Compton, which is LA, has already tried to get trauma as a disability category in the ADA. And then our Native American, our American Indian education system already has had a case and won, because there were 9 students that weren't served under that disabilities section because they had experienced so much trauma and the schools dismissed it and instead provided discipline. So we can see that this is going to start becoming a major issue from the legal side as well, not just from the care side and the support that we're providing. On page 11, that's where they're getting into the PBIS piece. So those last 4 bullets there are just some questions you can think about your own staff. The 3rd bullet says, do teachers address routine tasks such as making classroom assignments and implementing classroom rules differently because they are trauma informed? And then the next bullet too talks about that, but that's really the PBIS connection. How are we ensuring that we're meeting the needs of all of our students and we're consistent in our delivery? And then finally, the last on page 13, if you go there, that is the trauma skilled school model, and the rest of the book goes into those 5 different steps. And you can begin to start looking at that in your school, not just being a trauma informed school, but being a trauma skilled school. And if you go to the National Dropout Prevention Center website, there's more information on this, obviously, and in addition to this, and I just wanted to make you aware of it because I think it's just so important for all of our kids and for our staff, because our staff has experienced trauma too. Right? And so we have to make sure that we're taking care of everybody. And I know you all know that. And I just thought it was one more level to add to the work that we're already doing. And then the other thing they share at the conference, that's this little handout that you have. And if you didn't get one, there's more on the back. I left them all back by the sign-in sheet. Now please take them because they don't do me any good they've been sitting in my office since October. These WE surveys, does anybody use these with your students? Again, this is from Successful Practices, which is Bill Daggett's company, or a company that he is part of. And those are those kind of climate condition surveys that you can do with your students. So I decided, well, there's one more tool we know we need to be asking our kids. What is their feeling about the school? What are they getting out of the school? And also staff surveys, and I believe maybe even parents. But I can't remember. I couldn't find my notes. I'm sorry. I just learned the other day. I was going to be sitting here and I been out. But I would check into this. It was something really good. If you want to know more, I'll bring my notes up and just call me or email me and I'll send you what I have on it. So that's it. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. We are here today to introduce you to a new resource entitled Ensuring Success Resource Center. It's actually been in the developmental stage for the past year. but we're at a place where we really want to get some feedback from stakeholders like yourselves. We need the leaders in our area to provide us with some feedback as we finalize this product and get it into your hands to be used moving forward. So in a moment, we are going to give you an opportunity to go into the Resource Center and to explore some of 3 different areas that we've put together for you. And then at the end of that time, we're going to ask that you provide us with some feedback. So what is the purpose of this new Resource Center? The purpose is to really help us sustain all of the great work that's been going on in our region over the last 3 to 5 years. We have been embedded in the all-in work, which entails the MSTV work, UDL work, leadership work, and we really wanted to make a centralized location to where we could house all of the resources that we have been gathering and or professional development that we've been doing in this area for the last 5 years. We know that the live binders are great resources, but we're hearing that you have to remember what training you went to and what live binder it's in, and sometimes within that live binder, you have to remember a specific date in order to find that resource. So this is an attempt to really put all of those great resources in one location so that you have easy access to it. We had a design team that's been working on this, like I said, for the past year. I do not need to read all these names to you, but the one thing that really stands out is that what makes Greater Stark County so strong is our spirit of collaboration. So you can see we had district leaders from the region. We had State Support Team 9 consultants. We had our ESC consultant, as well as the Stark Educational Partnership come together on this product. And so lots of hands on deck for this. This resource center is going to be a searchable database. So you're going to be able to type in a keyword and all of the resources will come up that will pertain or have anything to do with that particular topic. When you view it this morning, that component's not turned on yet, but just know that that's going to be in there when it's revealed at the final stages. So within gathering all this information, we came up with 12 kind of big ideas that really came out of all of this work we've been doing. So you're going to have access to folders within this resource center that will open up. The first folder will be on beliefs and mindsets, classroom management structure, creating positive climate and culture, equity. There's going to be a folder that just has handouts for you, instruction, leadership motivation, MSTV, student academy, and UDL. So the 3 that are highlighted today are the 3 that you are going to have an opportunity to explore and provide us with some feedback. So we're going to be taking a look at the leadership folder, the MSTV folder, and the UDL folder. So those of us who have been leading the Making Student Thinking Visible work in our region, we've had a lot of educators go through this course. Over the last 3 years, we probably have at least 250 educators that have been through the course. So the question keeps coming up, how are we going to sustain and continue to grow this work? Well, one way is to create this resource center where we can house modules that will help you as leaders go back and continue this great work in your districts. The one disclaimer that I wanted to talk about before I give you a glimpse of what this looks like, this particular folder is not intended to necessarily take the place of the course. The course is very well done. These resources within MSTV are really in addition to help additional learning opportunities for your folks who have taken the course or for other colleagues who are interested in learning about MSTV. So this time, Tom, are you able to, it's towards, I'm going to go in and just walk you through a few steps of what this looks like, and then we're going to have you go in with a temporary login. So the temporary login is demo.account. Demo.account.
Demo.
And Jay Moody and Nikki Howard have been key members of our team who have been working really hard on the back end of the technology side of things. So when you go into this resource center, you're going to click on which Tom just did, the icon or I guess this is the home page. So you'll click on the Insurance Success for All. It's going to take you to a page where on the left-hand side, where you see those folders, leadership, MSTV, UDL, all the 12 folders will be there live when you actually have permanent access. So for now, I want you to click on the MSTV folder. There are a variety of resources in here, including all the 24 operating principles. But the one we're gonna highlight today is at the very bottom. It's the Padlet. So this is under construction, just like most of the resources in the center itself. So just know that this is a work in progress. But this was put together. At the top, you can see if you are introducing MSTV in your district, there are a variety of resources across the top that you can use. And then we're also starting to develop modules. So there's the first module, laying the foundation. And that would cover 4 of the operating principles that fall under laying foundations. So if you click on that module quickly, I'm not going to go through it, but it's been designed in a universal way to provide a lot of choice and option for your teachers. It could be used, we just used this last week at a staff meeting in Massillon, and he just divided his staff and told them pick one of the 4 operating principles that you really want to learn more about, and they kind of independently went. So there you can see you can read articles, there are videos embedded in this resource. So it's hopefully a tool to help you grow and sustain this particular work in your region, or in your district, I'm sorry. So if you go back out of MSTV and you hit UDL, we have gathered in one location a lot of CAST resources that will help you move the work of UDL in your district. And if you could click on UDL, multiple means of engagement, representation, action, and expression. It is underneath OTES best practice template.
Right here?
Yeah, I
That
think
one?
that's it, yeah, try that. Yes, so that takes you to a Padlet that Chris Narosky and I have created to help lead the UDL work in our region. So we have housed in here our 2 full-day presentation slides. We have put a variety of videos and resources within this Padlet that if you're interested in really starting or continuing the UDL work in your district, you'll have a lot of resources right here just on that one Padlet to use. And then the last one that we're going to show you, Anna's going to come up and talk about, is the leadership folder. And then I promise we're going to give you time to go in and explore this a little bit. Thanks, John.
Good morning, all. What our group was working on is a way in which we could help our administrators who are evaluating staff, and also from the teacher's perspective, when they look at their OTES rubric, how do I get to that accomplished rating? So we developed a resource linking the best practices, it's the very last one, to the actual OTES rubric. Knowing that the OTES rubric is going to modify here in a year, we'll be able to move this around to meet the new rubric that will be developed. But as you can see, this has been developed, eventually it could go to the top. Couple of things, we had a lot of discussion about how to attach resources to this particular document, because all of us in our districts are working at different paces. Some of us are more of a UDL district. Some of us might be doing MSTV. Some of us might be doing Marzano's. Some of us might be doing Hattie's work. So we're working at many different facets. So we didn't want to create it where a district would be overwhelmed by, well, I don't even know what any of this is about. So we try to create it that you could search it by what your district's focus is, or if you wanted to search this document working with a teacher in an area that they were just working on. So at the very top, our goal is at the very top, that area, if a teacher created a professional development plan and was working on focus for learning, you could click that and it'll go just to that part of the rubric. Because the actual rubric itself might be somewhat overwhelming to a teacher at the time because there's a lot of resources developed within it. So if you're working with your teachers and they want to work on focus for learning, this first standard, we developed different resources that would be available that, okay, if you'll just go up just a little bit, there you go. If a teacher wanted to look at accomplished and they didn't quite know what it means to have a teacher establish challenging and measurable goals for student learning that aligns with the standards, reflects the range of student needs. The teacher demonstrates how the goals fit into the broader unit, course, school goals, and content and skills. Here then, the teacher could, we've provided many different resources that would give the teacher something to start to look at. So here, this is talking about clarity and having the teacher then go through this. They could use it as part of their learning. You could work with them as they are, working through the year in their professional plan. We also have videos. You'll see some videos linked here. We have all different resources here. And we did then decide in the end, because we didn't want it to be this name game, UDL, we weren't quite sure. But if you're a district that was specifically working in one of those areas, we put at the end where this came from. So this particular engagement resource is a UDL resource. So maybe your district isn't working in Marzano's or Hess. Well, then maybe that wouldn't be something you'd want to look at because that might not fit your district at the time. So that was part of what we were looking at. The next part here, and thank you to Jackson because they provided much of this section right here. What does it look like in the actual classroom? So if you're, again, working on focus for learning, what would the teacher evidence look like? So now the teacher can go, well, do I provide these things in my classroom? Or the evaluator might say, as I'm sitting in the classroom, do I see these things happening in the classroom? Not only that, then what is the student evidence? And the teacher can start thinking about and reflecting on whether or not she or he is seeing these types of things in their classroom. So this is a resource that we hope can continue to grow and be valuable. I know that it was presented at the principals network this past week, was well received, but we're really looking to also get feedback as to what else would be helpful for teachers and evaluators as they are working through the OTES model. The rest of the leadership resources at this point really fit more into the all-in work. But again, our wish is that you could kind of share with us what would be helpful for you as leaders to help lead your work within the buildings. What could we put in this particular folder that you would want us to do? So that's kind of this section.
All right, if you'll go back to the demo site, we'd like to give you some time now to go into the resource and explore at least these 3 folders and provide us with some feedback. And I know we're on a time limit, so like 10 minutes, we'll give them about 10 minutes to go through and explore some of the resources. And then at the end, we'll put up a survey to where you can go in, and there are 3 short questions. How could you use a resource like this? What else would you like to see in it? And the final question, what questions do you have for our design team? So when we get back together, we can really try to meet your needs. This is a temporary password that you're going to receive. Go back to the slideshow, yeah. And I'm not sure how long it's going to be active, probably through the week. How about that? All right, so go ahead and take 10 minutes and explore. Just have to put the last slide up.
Yeah, one more. I saw you hovering last night. With the
It was good.
Well, I said I could get over to but I think that, this is a trial run today. I don't think that's
Yes, that's
Yeah, that's the accuracy
And that's literature. No, I don't think
I'll put that.
Maybe just go to the feedback one, right?
No, this one's on.
All right, we're gonna come back together. So at this point, do you have any comments, questions before we ask you to, I know you didn't have a lot of time, but you did get a, quick glance at it. Any questions or general comments? Yes.
This is amazing, and I very much appreciate the work that it took to put this together. I could see absolutely us using this
Great,
feverishly.
great.
Thank you.
Any other? Yes.
I know you mentioned, like if you had a teacher that you were trying to help see the difference between, say, skilled and accomplished in the videos. I also see support for principals who need to develop improvement plans, because if there's a specific area, then you've got to provide them with that support. So here's the module, here's the professional development opportunity. So I think it works at both ends of the spectrum there.
Absolutely. And I know when we were designing it, we definitely had that, the principal coaching hat on, like it's a great tool to use for principals to coach their teachers to that next level, for sure.
Well, the other, if I can just bounce off that as well, is, a lot of us have the opportunity to attend many of these training sessions. I've been to UDL, I've been to MSTB, I've been to all of them, but our principals don't have that same opportunity either. And many of the times, or maybe you're lucky to send like one principal to MSTB, one principal to UDL. This is also an opportunity for you to help grow your principals in what you are learning. and materials will be developed, so it's not like you have to create it all, and they can do it at their own time. It's not like they have to sit in a meeting to do it or be outside of a building to do it either. So that's another part that maybe, maybe thinking of it in that line, that it could be for you as a higher level kind of office, central office staff, to be working with all of your principals so that they have a little bit more understanding of the work that's being done that we get the pleasure of going and learning.
Right.
So.
And at this time, when you are in the resource center, that's not an editable or document, because obviously we don't want somebody to erase a bunch of stuff, but we obviously have the original. So I envision if you reach out to one of us and you want that OTES rubric sent to you directly, then you would have the opportunity to sit down with your administration team and come up with, what are the initiatives or the look-forwards that you have in your district, and you could add some best practice pieces to really tailor it to your needs. So at this time, if you would graciously provide us with a little bit of feedback, you can go through the QR code, or you can type in the address to the survey link. There are 3 short questions, but it really will help us moving forward. Our goal is to have this public and out to you. Teresa would like it done yesterday. Last year. But we would love to have this in your hands by the end of the school year. So if we could get some feedback, and we can finalize things on our end, and just know that it's probably always going to be a little bit of a work in progress. So thank you for your time this morning. We'll give you about 5 minutes to complete the survey, and then.
Perfect. Yep.
Thanks,
Perfect.
Tim.
Right, you good. You good.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and move on with the agenda. I know there's a lot to explore in there, and I'm kind of excited about this new tool as well, because a lot of all those resources for teachers, the UDL, the Marzano, the Hatties, and all those links, those are really great tools for teachers to use. And as I was in a building last week, one of the teachers looked at me, she's like, this, when I was talking to her about English learner strategies, she's like, this is nothing different. This is what I'm already doing in the classroom. And I said, that's great. If you're doing this with fidelity all the time, with every lesson, you're gonna hit all the students and you're not gonna leave anybody out. So your students with disabilities, your English learners, your gifted. So if you're using these tools with fidelity, that's the trick. So just when you're having those conversations with your building leaders and teachers, just keep that in mind. There's not a magic trick for anything. Just a few students might need a few extra steps. So I'm excited about that tool. So just a few updates. I won't take much of your time. State tests, and while there are not any new accommodations for English learners, there are a few adjustments, better explanations of what a translator might do and be able to do. And for example, if you have a human interpreter for the test, before this year, the interpreter had to stand behind the student and interpret on the fly on the computer. Now they can use the student to interpret. So that's one of the few changes, as well as some better explanation. So I put the link on there, and the first couple pages. The other thing, I've been getting a couple calls about students who still need to take an OGT portion of their test. There's a whole new page on ODE regarding the OGT. And so for English learners with the OGT, when we had that, we had different accommodations for that test. Now it's any accommodations that are allowed for any state test, they're allowed that on the OGT, regardless of years in US schools. So that's one piece that's on there. The other thing is, if a student graduated from completed all their coursework at one school, but is now residing in a different school district, they can take that, they have to take that test in the district that they're residing in. So if, for example, we had a student in Perry who went and did all the coursework there, and they're now living in Canton City, they would take that OGT in Canton City. The other thing with that is it's all online now, and there's no window. They can take it anytime. So you just schedule it with AIR or upload that and whatever. So they can take it at any time. So those are a few differences with the OGT. OALPA, we're in the middle of the OALPA testing window right now, which is the annual test for English learners. And it's all online, but if you have any K1 students, you do have to order an additional paper piece for part of the writing test. So part of the writing test is online, but there is a paper K1 that they write into. And if you didn't already order that, you can order it and it'll come in a couple days. And we have plenty of time, and that window to order is open through March 26th for that K1 writing portion of the test. But when you order it, ODE has said that there have been mistakes made, because there is the paper full version of test with the listening, speaking, reading, and writing that students with a disability, or if there's no Wi-Fi in the building, or Amish, or whatever, that they're taking the paper version of the test. You don't want to order that. You want to order the K1 supplementary. So definitely look at that supplementary piece when you're ordering that. And then I just put all the different resources there. In looking at the test and going through and working with some teachers who would be administering the test, I highly recommend, we're in the window now, so it's a little tough, but if your staff who's doing the testing has any time to go through the practice tests that are located, I put the sample there, because a lot of the students don't know some of the maneuverabilities of the actual online test, how you can expand just the reading portion or just expand the question and answer choices. So I put that link up there for everybody too. And that's all I have for English learners.
Any questions for Dana this morning? All right, we're gonna go ahead and take our break now. When we come back, Brian is gonna be up and talking about some of the State Watch information. So let's go ahead and take a 15-minute break. We'll start up at 10 after.
Now it's efficient. We were a lot of weeds.
This one here.
I've never heard of it.
I didn't show that yesterday. I used one to watch it. I really like that one. And then the slider.
I'm still just a straight. Yeah, I think we're towards this next year or whatever, but I'm not able to stay out of it.
Yeah, nice to see you, Michelle.
Yeah, we're excited. So this will be our first Labor Day. So that teacher is not That's
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
But I'm not sure what makes sense.
Something for me. Maybe just take it up, is it
Yeah, I was thinking about this letter or something.
Oh, or that, yeah, you can do that. And I'm just saying, yeah. It's your
Amanda was science. She has a great book. It's a great book. I just put it back on her desk. Yeah, and you. I'm a scary person.
All right, guys, we're going to get started back up here in a second. All right, so a couple of weeks ago, we started getting some phone calls, some emails, asking us about some letters that some districts and some buildings had received on watchdog designation. And so we decided to talk about that, and then as I was preparing for that, the watch designation kind of spilled over into the focus designation, because then I started getting some questions about we're a focus school, or we're a priority school. What does that mean? How can we, what do we need to do now? So what I want to talk to you guys about today is just how you get into those designations. Where's the data coming from? How can I find that? And as I was looking at that, I said, this is just a lot. So I wanted to put something together so that you could look at each of your buildings. You could look at your district data. So in the folder that you received, you should have one paper for your district, and then you should have one for each of your buildings that could possibly fall under any of these categories. Some of you are big districts, so you're gonna look like the expert bingo player. If you want to lay them all out in front of you. I am not that person, so I like to look at one thing at a time. So what I did in there is, you can see at the top, there's a little table, and it goes through each of the designations. So priority, it'll say yes or no, and you can see that that building is not a priority school. So as we're looking at that, you may not want to look at that one if you have another building that is. If you want to lay them all out, you know, that's perfectly fine. It's up to you. So here are the designations that you could have. The most severe is priority, and we're going to talk about that in a second. Then we have focus, warning, and watch. And as far as numbers go for that, we have, through the Stark County ESC, 9 of our buildings are priority buildings. So that doesn't apply for districts, all right? And then for things that fall under that designation, Warning, we don't have any. Okay, so as I get to that, you'll kind of understand that one a little more. And then watch, this is the new one. This is why we were getting all the phone calls. We have 21 buildings that fall under this designation. And then we also have 4 districts. So this is the one area that you'll notice that your district could be in this designation or your building. The other 3 federal, based on the ESSA plan, those are just for buildings. Whereas this one, the watch, which is where we got most of the questions, that is building could be a district. Okay. That you have, you can get from your EMIS director, and if you got one of those letters that kind of started this whole process for us, it told you in there that you can go to the data collector. Now, as I reached out to some of the districts that all data, you can go ahead and ask your EMIS director. If she can't find it, Sherry Shields from Spark helped me come in contact with that data. So there are people here that can help you. And what I did is I just kind of brought that all together to make it a little easier for your buildings. 18 identification data file, and it can be found in the business. If you have any other questions, I can put you in contact with Sherry Shields, and she can definitely help you find that. Let's start with priority, all right? Priority schools with ESSA 4-year graduation rates of 67% or lower is one way that you can be identified as a priority school. This is a federal, graduation rate. So as we look at this, this is not what we see on our report card. So I think she left, but in past and alternate assessments, that's the data that we're looking at here. This is only going to show up on our reports that are for high schools. So you can see right here, this is an example of a that had a 20.6 as their graduation rate, the federal one. Should I switch to another one?
Yeah, there's another one. There was.
How about that one? Okay. All right, so the 27 goes into priority. All right, that's one way that can happen. Again, we're only exams is one way they can meet graduation requirements, ACT or S, and then prerequisite score, I believe it's 13 or a 12-point industry recognized credential. Eric, does that sound about right for graduation? Both of those, yeah. You have to have both of those to be counted in that ESSA graduation rate for those things. So if a student doesn't fit in those for whatever reason, but we counted them as a state as a graduate, it comes out for the graduation rate as far as ESSA goes. Okay. The other way that you can become a priority school is this applies to Title I funded schools. And if they fall in the lowest 5% in their overall ESSA grade, okay? And their overall ESSA grade is determined by their federal graduation rate, performance index up, and they can get that advanced plus score on the report card, and it gives us a little performance index.
Last year used the Ohio alternative pathways. Do those not count then in that ESSA?
Those don't count. Yeah, so it's just, there's no extra things.
Right.
It's just those 3 things are what we can count as graduates for this purpose. Okay. And they give us a grade. They give us a numerical number that goes with that grade based on a combination of the graduation priority this year. I shouldn't say that. It doesn't affect anyone yet, but it could. All right. So the third one will not take place until 2020, and that affects schools that were focus or warning schools that did not meet the exit criteria. This year we had several schools that are identified as focus. We don't have any that are warning. The exit criteria, which we'll talk about those exit criteria that exist when we get to focus schools, then you automatically drop into be that way for 2 consecutive years. So you need that to get out. Along with, this is an ESSA graduation rate that is better than 67% for 2 consecutive years, And then no subgroups are performing low in the lowest 5% of schools. So it's going to then look at all of your subgroups as well. All right, so it's pretty intense. Once you're in, we think it's going to be, you know, you're going to have to make a really valiant effort to get out. All right, so that is priority.
I have a question.
Yes.
So priority was red, is it the worst?
Yes,
Okay,
yeah,
I'm
it
sorry.
is.
It just seemed you were doing it
So-
first, so I didn't understand, but now, I
Yeah,
mean.
no, it is the most severe
But
designation.
the word doesn't sound as bad.
Yeah, like I thought warning, when I read it at first, I was like, oh, warning, like, and so, but no, warning is actually lower down on the watch. So the
Danger, Will Robinson.
yeah, so that's why I went with red instead of
No, I like it. I
working
get it.
my way up
Okay.
or down from there. The next one is focus, and this is the one group that we had quite a few schools fall into. They are Title I eligible schools with at least one subgroup performing below the composite score or priorities of the priority schools. So what they did is they took all the schools that were priority and they put together their graduation and they put together their performance index and they came up with a composite priority score for that. And then they compared all the other Title I schools to that. Again, the composite score is the unweighted performance index and the graduation rate, the federal graduation rate. Yeah, Michael.
What is an unweighted performance index?
So you can't use advanced plus in there. So your accelerated students that scored advanced, so they get bumped up a level, can't use that in the federal plan there. So
Okay, but the other one's like an advanced is still 1.2.
yeah, so
You
advanced,
just got a 1.3.
right, you
That's
can't
all-
get the
that's the only-
1.3.
Okay.
So like a accelerated, you can't do that. Proficient is proficient. No changes there. So on that then, we're going to use that composite score, those two things combined. Now, most of our schools, as you're looking at this, you're going to say, wait, this school doesn't have graduation. This is my elementary school, my middle school, my intermediate school, whatever the case might be. In that case, performance index is everything, okay? So it's 100% of your composite score if you don't have graduates. Your high school, it's going to be a combination of the two there, okay? Oops, wrong button. All right, so here's what we're looking at. Now, this is going to be the first way that you can be identified. And what I did is you have to score below the priority schools for 2 years to be considered a focus school. So this is just a sample, and you have this. We're going to focus on these first 5 boxes. So under focus, and you guys have a lot more of these because you have one for each of your subgroups. So this one, I'm just looking at students with disabilities. And with the students with disabilities, we can see in 2017, our buildings scored below the priority schools. That's bad, okay? But in 2018, they scored above. And that's why you'll notice this school is not a focus school because they didn't do it for 2 consecutive years, all right? Now, if your school scored below that for both of those years, then you would be a priority, or sorry, you would be a focus school. Okay. All right, so that's one way. And not very many of our schools fell into that category. So it was very hard to find schools where it was happening for both. The next scenario is where most of our focus schools were identified. And the way with that is still talking about Title I eligible schools with at least one subgroup performing in the lowest 30% who have any combination of D's and F's for gap closing. So if we're looking at our Ohio report card and we have a combination of D's and F's and we fall in the lowest 30%, then we were identified as a focus school. Okay, so ignore these for a second. All right, we already talked about those first ones. This school had an F, and you can see there at 6.4%. So they fell below the 30, in the lowest 30%. That's why they are a focus school. So they met that second criteria for becoming a focused school there, okay? You could have 2 Ds, you could be at a 29.9. All right, now, how do I get out of that? Again, this is a meet all 3. Okay, so the school or district earns an overall grade of C or better. Okay, that's the federal grade of C or better. School or district earns a C or better in gap closing. All right, and school meets subgroup in that goal that's listed in gap closing. They have to meet the performance goal for those. Okay.
For just 1 year, not
Um,
a consecutive 2 years.
Yeah, just the 1 year for that one to get out. The way that we identify our focus schools is that they fell below the priority schools in the composite grade. This only looks at the last year, so this one looks at 2018. Okay, if you fell below the priority school, become a warning school. If you've already been identified as categories, all right, so you can't be a warning school there. It's where we scored, all of our schools that weren't already identified scored better here. So 59.172, higher than our 47, which was our composite average there. And so we're not a warning school. Okay. And then those 3 to get out are exactly the same as the year before. So obviously, if you're a warning school and you get a C on gap closing, you're not going to fall into being a you're not going to fall into being a focus school because you need to have that 2 years in a row. Okay. And this is probably one of the more confusing ones. And with that, the data that you're looking at, data that we can find on the report card. So it's not the gap closing goal and things like that. We can't really for a building or look at the sheet that how you did. Watch schools are on the back. Okay, so if you flip over on the back is where you'll find all of your watch information. Watch district and then buildings can be watch buildings as well. All right. So schools receiving funding for any of the following subgroups fit in this. Okay, so if you're receiving any funding for these 4 groups: English learners, students with disabilities, economically disadvantaged, and gifted students, those are all the areas that we're looking at, or the subgroups that we're looking at. So whereas with focus, we were kind of looking at all of the subgroups, this one, we're limited to just these 4. Okay. Now, as far as the N size, or how many students you need to be considered a subgroup, English learners, students with disabilities, economically disadvantaged, 25 students. We talked about, when we talked about the report card, that's going to drop over the next couple of years. So next year it's going to be 20. The year after that, it's going to be 15. Gifted students is 10, and it's going to stay 10. So it'll stay right there. The one thing I forgot to mention, as I talked about focus and I talked about priority, those ones were the federal, using the ESSA plan. Regardless of our plan right now of gradually reducing that, they use 10 for their subgroups for focus schools. So if you're sitting there going, man, I didn't think we had enough students to be a focus school for this subgroup, they use 10, even though as a state, we're working on it.
So all federal subgroups are 10?
Yeah, all federal subgroups were 10. So, and that's going to just stay 10. So they just, went right to it and didn't give us that easing in period to make things a little easier on us. But watch, it's going to work its way down, just like we've talked about for gap closing in the report card, that sort of thing. Right, so the first thing they're going to look at is they're going to look at the average performance for a given, going to give an average score. This is not the goal. All right. One of the schools that I was looking at, and when I was going through the data at first, I'm like, this is bugging me. School should not be school. Why are they a watch school? And they met the goal for gap closing, but we're not above the average. So that is one thing would be count as a miss, okay? So now with that, so if you hit any of these areas, you don't qualify. So for gifted, there's a building goal of a 117 performance index. As soon as school's that, they can't be a watch school. We know that's hard to get, all right? So they give us another route to get there as well. Half value added. Let's say you're in third. What they then do is they look at your gap closing points. So on the report card, if you got more than 50, you're okay, you pass. Okay, so they just give you a school that's on watch. All right, if we look at it, we can see their PI goal. They missed both of these. They had value added, gain index either. They went 0-4 there. So they are on watch. They did not meet any of the 4 things. Okay. Now, again, any one of these. So if they had met just one, they would be fine. They wouldn't be considered a watch school. Okay. Now, this is an example of a school that didn't have value added. So that you're going to notice that they have gap closing points here. Okay. And they got 100 on both of their gap closing. Now, they really only needed it for one, but they actually got it for both. So they're a watch. You can see that designation right there. Okay. Now, the reason some of you are going to look at this and go, man, I don't fit into any of these categories. We want you to be able to see your game, all right, to have an idea of where you're at right now. As I was looking through some of them, I think there was one district and they would have been on watch, or they were on watch because of 1/10 of a point, they were over. It was something so small, but just having an idea of where we're at moving forward so that you know and you can plan. We don't want you to be shocked when you get the letter, because I know some districts were like, whoa, what is this? And that's where all those questions came in before. This is what the gifted one looks like. Again, for math and ELA, there's just value addeds are 1. All right, so they are on watch. All right, the second one, they did not have value added. So as we look at that, we filled in their gap closing. They didn't get any points for gap closing in language arts, but they got 100 points for gap closing. And with that, I forgot to mention this as well, guys, sorry about that. There's not a gap closing for gifted, all right? So what I had to do is I had to go through and use the same formula that they would use for gap closing, and I just figured that out, what it would be for you using the information in that table. Because gifted is not actually one of those gap closing subgroups that we have.
Wouldn't they not be in it because they have, not on watch because they have a 117?
Yeah, I'm sorry, did I say it differently?
Yeah. Well.
Yeah, they're not on watch because they got 100, so they're over 50 for their. So if I'm looking at this, Diane, here they didn't meet it.
Right.
Okay. Here they didn't meet it.
Right.
Here they did.
But what about the top one?
Oh, yeah, the top one is on watch. Okay.
And I thought they wouldn't be if they had a 117 for the PI.
The first one's the goal. Yeah. What they actually got.
Okay, I got it.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Thank you. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
I get it.
Everybody else? All right, now, we were supposed to have a webinar with ODE and kind of talk more about the next steps of watch, because that's one of the things that as I was presenting, I was like, man, I feel awful that, well, I don't know the next step of what, now that you're a watch school. I know that you have to put together an improvement plan. And then I'm kind of like, okay, now what? What happens if you're a watch school next year? So I'm waiting to hear back. I have about 15 questions that I sent off to ODE, and I'm waiting to hear. So they're probably starting to hate me on the watch stuff.
You mentioned we had a phone call.
So yeah, and we had a webinar, a phone call with them planned, and it was set up. And when everything else froze in Ohio, so did our webinar. So that got canceled, and we're going to reschedule it. So I'm hoping to have some more information to share with you guys, and kind of be able to inform you on what happens next, or where do we go from here. All right. Do you guys have any questions that I can answer? Yeah.
So the top example,
Yes.
one of the value addeds under one.
Yeah, so he didn't, they didn't meet one, so it has to be a -1 or higher, so closer to 0. So because of that, because it was just below that -1, they're on watch.
So, but the top is, ELA is over 1, that's under 1, so it's not on watch.
So actually on watch, so when we're thinking about it, Ed, is, since that's a negative number that we have there, so if we think of,
But I would think ELA should be on watch and Matt's not on watch.
yeah, well, so if any of them are on, then they're on watch. So remember, we have to pass all 3 of them on watch.
You're only watching the building, you're not only watching by a sub.
Yeah, go ahead.
So just a quick comment, thank you, that was a great
No problem.
explanation. Sherry Falk and Sue Long are kind of our experts on our team that have been to a lot of webinars and training that
Sure.
can answer, but then your report or anything, leadership, will be out report you.
Awesome. Cool.
And go away. And then we go, and then we get you out of the designation.
And then they go
Yes.
back out. Don't worry, you'll be back.
All right, so I'm gonna turn it over to Becky with our farm to
Focus piece to it, but the watch, is that more, that's state,
That's state, so the first 3 are federal and then.
watch is state, which I was familiar with, and we were celebrating because we showed all this great growth,
Right.
but then we had the ESSA, yep. Anyway, I'm Becky Miller, I represent River Local Schools. We, just 2 clicks. For the county, we're establishing resources for districts to use to continue that move on harvest. And so we have that harvest of the month document. Every month we have a calendar that I think we gave to everybody in August, with each month has a harvest, and this month's harvest is cucumbers. And so there's a document there, it's in the binder. I sent it out to our teachers. It's funny because of the pickle on the right, so I have a lot of funny comments from my teachers. The super pickle on the right, but that is a cucumber. But we have easy little resources there.
What type of comments were said?
Oh, just move on.
Do you want me to click the survey? Do you want me to pull it up?
You can, there's a survey at the top. Okay, so with our farm to school, we have some money that needs to be spent by the end of this year. Not a whole lot of money left for classroom. But anyway, you just know that I'm representing the classroom side, and I report back to you guys. Stacy Bettis represents the food service for our food service folks. And then Heather Nykirk is Ohio State Extension person, and she represents our community, and she helps us connect with resources that are in our area. It's really hard, Ohio, there's lots of things out there. If you just Google farm to school, lots of other states out there have a lot of resources to pull from. Our harvest year is not conducive to, all the amount of light and such to grow all year round. But anyway, we can still do school gardens, and I know there's school gardens out there in our county. But this is a resource, survey, please, if you would take a few minutes. We're looking, if anyone wants to do a field trip to a dairy farm in May. Heather Nykirk from Ohio State Extension, she had reached out to 4 or 5 farms in Stark County, in Columbiana areas. And if you're interested, I know it's very last minute. I said, a lot of folks can only do so many field trips a year, with May being, just around the corner for us. But if you're interested, please complete that survey. We're looking at 5th grade as the key grade to send students to. So take a minute, do that if you're interested, and then we'll get you the proper forms, those of you who apply. We do have some funds to spend on transportation, but not to cover the full cost. So anyway, there you have it. A lot lighter than value added and closing and focus. So any questions on that? Yeah.
It's not really involved any of these things with the growing. We do have at SAM, grow lights. We have single tier, and we also have some triple tier ones. I know we've got some right now, Walker, I believe, he's got one. I know we've got them all over. Chef Brown at Dre is growing it, is starting some herbs in his, so if they want to start some things, you're doing a school garden or something a bit later, you can get your plants started, but we do have them.
And we chose fifth grade because of the standard soil and water. We have some folks doing problem-based learning units at that grade level. We thought they could do, the dairy. Let me know if you have any questions.
Becky, is there a cost to the cost is transportation?
The only cost is transportation to the districts. Yep.
I think we all look like that sometimes, mentioned, but just so you know, that is what a gifted kid often does think like that. It's hard to focus. So I love that picture. It's very hard to follow Brian and Pickles. It has performance index, value added, and input points. And I think we mentioned this earlier, but only. So it's better than last year. Last year there were 8, not 8%, 8. So it's better, but I had never seen this breakdown. So you think about what your district did. 140 met the gifted performance index. Okay, remember that's the one in which we need a 117. 406 met gifted value added. And in my opinion, I think the value added is the most important. It's showing growth, and I think it's hard to grow gifted kids, so that's good. And 91 met the input points element. So you can see where you fall in that, but I thought that was sort of important to know that. These next topics are just real broad. We cover a lot of these in our gifted coordinator meetings, but I thought, what would you want to know? At the link that Tom just clicked on, this is where you can go for ODE, for info, and find if you ever need something like acceleration policy or et cetera, et cetera. Pickles again. Okay, see, it's hard to follow Pickles. If you go to this site, again, this is the OAGC link, but it's easy to find. There are, I thought it was on there. Up at the top, it says the rules document. About the 4th bullet down, it says the master list of approved documents. And that, you can get a link there. You can also get it on ODE. But we've not been told of any changes. Now that says it was updated November of 2018. I don't know I couldn't see any difference. But that's probably something you might want to watch, especially if you're thinking of purchasing new assessments for next year. We do know there are some that are missing, ones that are often used, for example, OLSAT and Stanford on there. If you also realize we have to identify in creativity and visual and performing arts, there are none on that list for those either. So we're not quite sure where that's headed, but that's where we will be watching. So the watch thing that Brian brought up, we didn't even know that was coming, and all of a sudden it had appeared. So I think Brian has been sitting with smoke coming out of his ears for months now trying to figure that out. So I appreciate that. We just don't know any more than what he said. So when we do know more, we will share it. Okay, questions on gifted? Okay. Who's next? Oh.
Good morning, everyone. When you walked in and signed in, you should have picked up a Post-it pad and a pen. Those were 2 of the gifts given to the arts teachers when they came to the conference. We wanted to share some with you. They also received a very nice canvas bag that says arts on it. So please, if you didn't get these, please do. I just wanted to give you a little update about how the day went, because I've been talking about this day since September, and I thought you needed to have a follow-up so that you know how the day went. Some facts about the day. 21 districts were represented, plus ESC employees. 150 arts educators attended, and 31 breakout sessions were held. So it was a day filled with arts, ranging from dance to music sessions and visual art sessions, and just some general discussions about how kids can improve in scholastics. Just some really, really good, valuable conversation. Who attended the conference? There's the breakdown. These are the people who completed the evaluation. So as you can see, there was pretty much an even divide with visual art teachers and music educators. We have a limited number of dance teachers in our area, but they were there, and also with drama theater people. Some quotes from the day on the evaluation. Just take a minute. Big deal. They felt that finally there was something geared toward them. There was a focus just on them and not something extra that they were put into because of the sponsors. If you didn't know who sponsored the day, without the help and support of these organizations, it could never have happened. And then just some pictures from the day, and a thank you to each of you because you promoted it, you helped with the day, and I just wanted to say thank you. We have our opening session in the middle. We have John Jurovich, Ohio's 2018 Teacher of the Year. He was truly inspiring, and there's a thought that we might see him again in our area, maybe in June. And then we have the dance, just some really, really good sessions and conversation. So again, thank you to each one of you for your support. You made it successful. Does anyone else have anything to add about the day? If you heard anything in your district from your teachers?
Just in general, I appreciated having, in planning PD for my district, I appreciated having something for my arts teachers to attend that was beneficial to them, because we all know it's difficult having something that's, truly beneficial to them to enrich their learning and development. So I appreciated them having the opportunity very much.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
I agree.
We'd love to have something for PE and health.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was doing mental health training.
No pressure, Tom, but just
We
put
don't
it out
know.
there.
We don't know if this is going to happen every year because I do know that it's difficult for districts to give up teachers on a PD day when you plan something. And pardon me?
It's, a lot of times we're so focused on literacy or like teeth and some other things. I agree. I mean, not that our PP isn't meaningful. It is meaningful for our staff, but this to me is very much more meaningful. It's exactly what we're doing in the classroom.
Right. So if we did it every year, you would be okay with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay. Did you hear that, Dan? The thing is, I might not be able to have subs for those districts that are in session that day. That was a one-time shot with a grant, so that would be the piece that would be okay. So if you have class that day, there's a definite possibility you won't have subs.
How many districts were in session that day?
About half. We had 12 districts who had PD that day.
So for next year's calendar, maybe look at that same day, but also look at the day in October, because a lot of districts, is it October, is it Fair Friday?
Yeah, January had more people that's why the January date was chosen. It had more people who had professional development. Yeah, and as Diane says, October date isn't as consistent as the January date was this year. Yeah, we don't. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Hey, Tom.
Yes.
What about having a sliver of that at the Impact Conference in June?
We did that last year, and we're working on that. There will be some sessions, but it won't be totally art space.
Understood.
We did that last year too. Yeah, we're working on a track for everybody.
Good, thank you.
And just know that for the summer days, we're working on that right now and trying to be mindful of having tracks or sessions that apply to anyone and everyone. So that is something we're working on. Wanted to give an update. At the last meeting, there were some questions that came up when we were looking at our students who will be eligible for graduation next year. We know that the alternate pathways that we have this year, we're kind of limited with what we can do just based upon the time. But we do, we reached out because two questions came up regarding these additional pathways for next year. And they really centered around, within option 1, 2 of the options. One being earning 3 or more college credit plus credits. And the question that came up, are there any courses, say at Start State, that have I'm gonna call it a lower requirement for entry? So instead of having a specific score for the ACT or a designated score on the AccuPlacer, do they have any courses that may have a lower requirement or no prereq to get in? And the answer is yes. We spoke with Shelley McCombs at Start State, Tom and I did, and if you look in the live binder, you will see under graduation requirement follow-up, there's a document that is, looks like this, and there's some yellow courses highlighted. Any of the yellow courses that are highlighted, there is no prerequisite. The students may need to sit for an AccuPlacer, but there is not a specific score that they have to meet in order to get into that class. So for instance, there are some electives. You have College and Career Success Skills, that's a 3-credit course. Computer Applications for Professionals, that's a 3-credit course. Personal Finance is 2, and Ethics 3. So there are some courses as well as within the content areas that there is no prerequisite for these courses, okay?
Where was that shared?
It's in the live binder. You should have a tab under today's date that says, I believe it says graduation requirement update or follow-up.
There it is. Thank you.
And then again, any of the courses that are highlighted in yellow are those courses that they may have to sit for an assessment, but they don't have to score a specific score. The other one that was asked about was down here, the second to last bullet, earn a state board approved industry recognized credential. When you click on that link, it takes you to all the various credentialing areas, human services, information technology, education and training. And again, it says that you need to have either an industry credential or credentials that equal at least 3 points. Within there are things like CPR first aid, and that goes across many of them. You also have within education and training, the child abuse awareness and prevention. Those I believe are both 1 hour, but again, if you take multiple assessments, and the best person to talk to in your district is going to be your career tech, your CTE individual, whether it's the director, coordinator, whomever you may have in your districts. And sorry, I see some smiles coming on there, like thanks Dan for giving us some more work. But those will be the individuals who would be able to lead you in the right direction as to what is the assessment, how do we go about getting that assessment. You'll also see within information technology, there is just page after page of credentials. You may have some students who are working within a technology course who may be spending a lot of time on Microsoft, or who may be spending a lot of time within Adobe, maybe even in some of your graphic arts courses. And you will see that there are assessments there that would fall under getting 3 points towards that alternate pathway. Eric, did I explain that correctly? Or do you have anything else that would be beneficial for the group with that? CTE is the best person to probably touch base with, and they would have a lot of expertise within all of those areas and the exams that go along with those. Okay. Questions about those 2 areas or those follow-up? Hopefully that answered your questions, and hopefully, again, there may be other, we only talked to Start State, we did not reach out to other universities, so we're not trying to exclude any universities, but we specifically reached out to Shelley to find out about the CCP courses and those prereqs. So you may want to reach out if you have partnerships with other universities, they may have the same situation.
I need to get back to
Yeah.
that.
All right, time for announcements. And our first one here is going to be for Tom and the math tournament.
Just a quick reminder, you may have seen an email from me about the math tournament. Just one. Registration is due tomorrow. We're still a couple hundred students short. Please tell your people to get the names in there. I actually won't technically close it until Tuesday next week probably, but with the snow days and ice days, everything gets pushed back. So if you're able to attend, great. But it seems like our numbers are actually gonna be a little bit higher because we have 2 districts from last year that were unable to attend are now sending full teams. So we may break the 800 student number. So it's amazing. And it runs itself. Massillon does a wonderful job. Jessica Harding over there at Massillon in the middle school does a wonderful job of getting everything going. Next, just a quick reminder of our conference. We show it at every lead teacher meeting. Obviously, we're, pumping it here. If you have teachers who would like to present, please let us know. This is a great opportunity to give kudos to those people in the classroom who do wonderful things and that could share with everybody in the county. Again, at Glen Oak High School on June 11th and 12th, and we're still working on the food trucks. This came across yesterday from the University of Akron. Some of you may have seen it individually. I've shared it with the math group. Dale was sharing it with the science group, but it's their open house for their STEM center. It's free. There's got a lot of hands-on activities. And if you go into the live binder, the full flyers there with a breakdown with some more information of the different groups that will be happening. I think there's a girls in coding, there's a math circle, there's a lot of activities that would be presented during that time.
And then just a reminder, SST wanted us to remind you that nominations for the Dr. Karen Williams Leadership Award are due by March 1st. You'll find all the information here at this link or posted in the live binder. So if you have anyone that you are thinking about nominating, all the information, including the nomination form, the rubric, and the media release are all there. So we'll go ahead around the room and get additional announcements. Ryan, you have anything else? Dale? Amanda? Julie, anything else? Anna? Tom?
Just a reminder, Career Arts Day 2019 for high school students will take place at Kent State Start on March 22nd. That's the day before spring break. That's the day everybody seems to like. Information has not been sent to teachers yet because I'm still working on trying to find presenters. But it's a day where kids come, high school kids this year, and learn about careers in the arts. And that it's an option for them. And so if you have an art person in your life that you may think wants to present, please let me know. It's March 22nd. So your teachers will get more information soon.
We'll go down this row here. Christy, Carrie. Remember, this is also your time to ask questions of other districts. No one? Becky?
No, thank you.
No? Coming back here, Steve? Okay. Eric, that's something perfect.
Okay. Get ready.
Oh, never mind. Eric, hold up.
We are looking to start the letters endeavor possibly, but we are also looking at how do we sustain this after our initial training. I know that we have several other districts who have already begun the letters training. So thinking maybe we could do some collaboration after the initial.
A group of us are gonna meet after next month, the March meeting, for the annual letters, so if you wanna join us after this meeting.
After this
After this
meeting next
meeting
month.
next month.
Okay.
For that exact reason.
And we've also kind of tapped into the county to see if they could maybe support
Well,
that.
yeah,
Support
we're
that.
put together,
Gotcha.
such a proposal, they can't.
And do you know if is Chris Gibowitz planning on being there as well? Okay, perfect.
2 weeks ago at the ACT legislative seminar, the new governor of Ohio, Mike DeWine, spoke about career tech education to provide more money for career tech education, particularly for capital advancement, which would include upgrading buildings and equipment. So we look forward to whatever he may be able to do with that regard. It was also very clear from his message and also from the lieutenant governor that career tech education will continue to be in the forefront in terms of their interest in economic development throughout the state of Ohio. The other thing that I wanted to point out is that earlier this week, the Ohio Department of Education released its transition plan for Perkins 5. And Perkins is the federal grant that defines most of CTE compliance in Ohio. One of the things that is occurring with Perkins 5 is that we're going to be changing the way that we plan for the money that we receive through the grant. And that's going to require that the CTPDs are going to need to do an extensive needs assessment in developing their plan for the money. So you may be hearing more about that in coming weeks. I know with the Stark County Career Compact, which is Jackson, Lake, Plain, and North Kansas City schools, that we probably will be talking about that sometime in April with our planning committee. But the implication is that it's going to be a significant amount of work, and there probably is going to be a much greater emphasis, including partner schools within the CTPD. So,
Pertaining to the summer PD, Tom, you mentioned wherever time is, you mentioned food trucks. Our culinary arts program has purchased a food truck and should be good and ready to go by that point. So if you want, reach out to Phil Ogilvy, our culinary teacher, and we could probably have the food truck there with some students to provide another option.
If you talk to him before I do, please give him a heads up.
Okay, all right, I'll give him heads up. Go ahead and feel free to reach out.
Yeah,
Those are the opportunities he's looking for the students. I don't know if he's available that date. We can find out. Just a reminder, we have Missy McLean from Akron Children's Hospital coming in tonight at Hoover Hall, 7 o'clock, to give a presentation on reducing childhood stress. Parents from any district are invited to attend. Last thing, are there any districts here that administer the Pimsleur language aptitude test to their students?
Say that name again.
Pimsleur, Pimsleur. You used to?
In Marlington, for foreign language.
Yes.
Yes, they no longer do that, but you could talk with Dana. Where's Dana?
Dana said to talk to Marlington.
Yes.
Should I talk to Carol second?
No, it's before Carol, I think. Talk to Adam McKenzie at Tuslaw, because he was the principal when we gave it.
Okay. So nobody
That's
is
not
present. Okay, all right, thank you.
I just want to share a quick analogy. If you're trying to work toward programs like letters and look for funding, I heard this analogy this week at a breakout session at a literacy conference by Steve Dykstra. I got his name right. Yeah. All right. Do we decide which kids should get vaccinated or whether or not the disease is coming or not if we give the vaccine? No, we vaccinate them all. We don't wait to take chances. The stakes are too high. Do doctors care which bacteria is causing our ailments outside of strep? Or do they not waste their time and just provide the antibiotic that will take care of all bacteria? Every student benefits from the best instruction. Some may need more of it or taught slower paces or speed, but when they need it, they still need it. Everyone needs the same thing. Everyone is harmed by the same thing. Just give all students the instruction that will take care of all reading issues from the very beginning, from the start. I thought that was a great analogy to remind ourselves. Doctors don't waste time looking for bacteria. We spend so much time using our diagnostics and our screeners and so much money invested in them. If we do the right instruction from the very beginning, we'll get it and we'll nail it. So keep up with the letters work. I want to join that group.
Yep.
Can I join it?
Anybody's welcome to come.
All right, thank you all. We'll see you next month. Have a great week.
Okay.